There's quite a lot going on in the context of Brexit. There is a lot of disillusionment, perhaps is the right word, with Keir Starmer after it was really relegated almost to an afterthought in yesterday's manifesto reveal. But do you know, at the same time, there's an indication of perhaps why it has been relegated to almost afterthought status in today's Daily Mail, which I appreciate. It's not the influence that it used to be, but I think it's still pretty much the house journal for the terminally deluded and bilious. And they managed to get almost a half-page story under the headline, "Surprise, now he says all of Boris's Brexit deal is up for negotiation." So Keir Starmer has managed to be simultaneously pilloried for not being strong on the need to revisit Brexit and for suggesting that he is going to revisit Brexit. I think that's worth pausing for a moment, isn't it? We live in very strange times, obviously, and I'm afraid they're going to stay strange for a while, even if the expected result of the general election arrives. But you have the leader of the opposition, a man riding extremely high in the opinion polls, being criticised for polar opposite positions. People who are criticising him for both X and Y at the same time. He is being criticised by the right for saying that Brexit is up for negotiation, and he is being criticised by actually right, left. I know it feels like it fits on the Brexit debate, but it doesn't, does it? Of course. So he's being criticised by the Daily Mail, which you could see as the sort of house journal of people who thought that Brexiteer was a positive label to have tattooed across your forehead rather than a mark of eternal shame. And he is being criticised by people who knew and explained the ridiculousness of becoming the first population in history to vote to impose economic sanctions on itself, criticising him for not essentially pledging to revisit it. Sometimes I get on air and I know roughly what I'm going to be talking about, but I don't know the specifics of it. And as I thrash out the specifics, I find myself, I'm taken by surprise by what I'm saying to you. So I hadn't clocked the absurdity of this contradiction. Anyways, it's the essence of Brexit, is that Keir Starmer is now getting it in the neck for promising to revisit Brexit and getting it in the neck for not promising to revisit Brexit from two completely different constituencies, which I think forms a fairly neat foundation stone for elements of the conversation that I'd quite like to have, because it is to the novelist Robert Harris that I would turn your attention next. Harris, of course, perhaps best known for Fatherland, but a writer of immense acumen and I think a former political editor of the Sunday Times. And he tweeted last night, "Brexit, the great unmentionable of this election, is really what has done for the Tories. It's infuriated both those who voted to remain, who see it as a colossal self-inflicted disaster, and those who voted leave, who think they were told a pack of lies. Result, annihilation." So the question of whether the imminent Tory annihilation is perhaps all down to Brexit. And that might form the first part of our conversation today, because, inevitably, media who prioritise clicks over actual content are spending far too much time reporting on the fact that Nigel Farage's party has overtaken the Conservatives by 1 point in one poll. It is a moment, absolutely newsworthy, but obviously not on anything like the scale that some people would describe. The point is, of course, that the man who lied longest and loudest about Brexit is in some ways the chief beneficiary, if Robert Harris is right, the chief beneficiary of the damage that Brexit has done to the Conservative Party. So I've got two questions, really, one about the Tories and one about the Labour Party. I think we'll start with the Labour Party, and that question is, has Keir Starmer got it right? Has Keir Starmer got it right? Does the fact that he's been attacked for doing something that he's also being attacked for not doing prove that, on this at least, the theory of the Ming vase is absolutely in place? It is such a tricky business that to draw any attention to it whatsoever would be hazardous, would be deleterious, would be a vote loser. I do get frustrated. I'm not going to lie to you. When people like Angela Rayner, you can tell. There were a couple of things last night where she was being party before person, party before herself. You could tell that in her bones she wants to get rid of the 2-child limit on benefits. And quite rightly, Julie Etchingham asked her how she could end up on the other side of the argument from Suella Braverman on something like that. Suella Braverman, of course, untethered completely from reality, but even a stopped clock is right twice a day. And you know that the Labour Party is full of people, including, oddly, including Keir Starmer, who recognise the ridiculousness of what we've done, but think that it is more important to stay quiet. So there's a few bits of Robert Harris's tweet that I find interesting. I think he misses out the people who voted for it and realise that it is a colossal self-inflicted disaster. So the people who are most responsible for the shift in the polling, and the polling is now pretty powerful, although not powerful enough, I don't think, to make it a no-brainer for the Labour Party to go in on this. But if you look at the polling that the Labour Party have, do those of us who think Keir Starmer is wrong not to revivify the Brexit argument, do we have to shut up and sit down? So whatever frustration we may feel, whatever frustration you may feel, the fact that it is all currently going so well, coupled with the fact that he can be attacked simultaneously for both doing and not doing the same thing, as in revisiting the ludicrous arrangements that Boris Johnson and David Frost signed us up for, does that prove that he is actually getting it right? Or is it an act of political cowardice? We'll start with that, and then we may get on to the question of whether or not the biggest hole below the Tory waterline is actually caused by Brexit, and the strange situation that conjures up of the man who lied loudest and longest about Brexit being the beneficiary of Brexit's inevitable destruction of the people charged with delivering it. I mean, if the stakes weren't so high, the irony would be delicious, wouldn't it? But we may move on to that. So I want to begin with that question there. It's Keir Starmer getting it in the neck for not being more robust about the need to revise Brexit, and getting it in the neck for apparently saying that he is going to revise Brexit. Has he actually got the issue correct? Hit the numbers now. You will get through. 0345 6060 973. John in Exeter says the polling suggests he has got it absolutely right. Revisiting Brexit at this point would be the equivalent of tipping TCP onto an open wound for those who are currently considering voting for the Labour Party, but who perhaps voted for Brexit previously and have not voted for Labour in the past. I mean, there comes a point where you wonder whether the prioritisation of achieving power over almost everything else becomes more bad than good. But I don't think we're near that point yet. I kind of just want a form of reassurance, in a sense, that, I mean, the thing is, if you know that it needs to be revisited, then you can probably console yourself with the thought that it needs to be revisited. The inevitability of gravity coming back into play again, of improving our trading relations with our closest geographical trading partners. I mean, the madness, in fact, of making it harder to trade with our nearest trading partners is one for the history books. And yet, the sense from his words that he's not intending to, quotes, reopen old wounds, end quotes, is impossible to ignore. Brexit, says Richard, is for the next election. So that's where we'll go in on this. So start off with Keir Starmer. Has he got this right? And in many ways, the more committed a Remainer you are, the more powerful it is for him, for Starmer, if you agree with what he's doing. I am going to, without even putting my tongue in my cheek, I'm going to describe myself as being 52-48 on this. It's heart versus head stuff, isn't it? Head says, yeah, he's probably got it right. Heart says, oh, for God's sake, the sooner we undo this epochal harm inflicted on us by liars, cheats and chanters, almost all of whom are fleeing the stage before the curtain even comes down, then heart kicks in. So I would say genuinely 52-48. But what do you think? Has he got it right? 0345 6060 973. And if he's got it wrong, why do you think it would be better, given where he stands in the polls, for Keir Starmer to have kind of applied the electrodes to the corpse of Brexit and reanimated the entire shebang? It's coming up to 10:15. The other question that we'll move on to is going to be, and you may actually want to have a crack at both. There's no reason why you shouldn't. But I'm a big fan of Robert Harris, who's both as a journalist and latterly as an author, someone who understands particularly the threat posed by the far right throughout European history. But when he says that it is Brexit that has really done for the Tories, because the people who wanted it feel betrayed, and the people who didn't want it feel furious, I don't know that that's necessarily correct. But it is obviously deeply ironic that the man who lied loudest and longest about Brexit has just overtaken in the polls, or at least the leader, the party has overtaken in the polls, the party of the people who were charged with delivering it and therefore essentially sentenced to inevitable disaster because of the impossibility of delivering the unicorn.